All right. All right. So, how to plan and budget for accessibility. Welcome to Accessible Web Office Hours. I'm Peter Jewett. I'm here with Gianna Barnhart. We are the sales team. So we are going to go over making the case for accessibility in the budget, kind of broadly what we've seen as we talk to our customers. Then we're going to get into contractual accessibility requirements, legal compliance requirements, improving the experience, maybe the most important reason to do accessibility, and then how to plan for your budget and end it like all good webinars with a sales pitch, a quick sales pitch on choosing the right partner. So, making the case for accessibility in the budget. To make a strong case is we're putting this together. We kind of started by thinking about what a Venn diagram would look like and why folks are coming to us. So, like I said, the most important piece here to us, the way we always want to encourage our customers to think about this is making the experience better for your users. And then there's also legal compliance requirements. So there's ADA Title 3, ADA Title 2, Section 508, Section 504, European Accessibility Act, Accessibility for Ontarians or Disabilities Act. So depending on where you're at, there's legal requirements. And then one of the things we see all the time are contractual accessibility requirements and customers coming to us because they're trying to figure out how to scope this into a deal or maybe how to catch up with a sales guy that already baked it into a deal. And now you're obligated and locked in. So typically the way we see this is that the leadership at companies kind of works backwards through this list. So we're going to start on contractual accessibility requirements. So these situations are where we just had a call today where someone had a higher ed university that wanted to buy a piece of software. And in order to buy the piece of software, that university, because they take money, federal money, as part of their funding mix, they are responsible for procuring accessible tools and services. So they were concerned with Section 508. And in order to purchase this platform, it was a donation platform for kind of, reaching out to alumni and making donations to the university. They had to know that this platform was accessible. So this particular client was dead on, called us at the right moment, kind of before they had signed the deal, and said, "Hey, look, we've got this accessibility requirement. We need a Section 508 VPAT. What is that? What is that? What is a VPAT? What is Section 508? This is something our customers are asking for, or this customer is asking for. And before we agree to it, we looked it up and looks like you all can help us with this." So we see these situations all the time where, especially with software companies, they are trying to sell into a larger organization. And usually we see this in industries like healthcare, banking and finance, government, education in this case. And a smaller company is trying to do business with a larger company. And the larger company, I'm making up numbers here, but the larger company says, "Yeah, look, here's a deal. It's a $2 million contract, but as part of this, we need you to go do some accessibility work." And usually the nice thing about this is the smaller company can come to us and maybe it's a $10,000 engagement, maybe it's a $20,000 engagement. But if you come to us early on this, we can help you scope it. We can help you quote this so that you can build it into the deal, build it into this initial deal. And then in the case of this customer we talked to today, um, that by doing the initial project and getting your accessibility baked into your core product, right? Paying for it with this first deal, you now have an accessible product. You have your accessibility conformance report in the VPAT format. You have everything you need to go sell it to the rest of your customers. So this is really kind of unique in that the big companies are pushing this down into the smaller mid-market companies. It's a place where, as a startup, you can get a lot of competitive advantage by getting ahead of this and implementing accessibility early. And it's also, in this case, this was a situation where this is pretty typical, where even though the customer that we were talking to, it was their first time hearing about accessibility, they were new to it. Um, there's actually ADA Title II requirements that are coming through. And this kind of gets into the next slide about compliance laws, but they're ADA Title II requirements. So this was just the first customer asking about it, but I can guarantee that over the next 9 months as we approach 9, 10 months as we approach April 2026, where ADA Title II requirements for WCAG come into effect, they're going to be hearing from it from every one of their customers that's taking some amount of federal, state, local money. So some tips on this are: don't wait until your contract deadline. If you're a salesperson, I don't imagine there's a ton of salespeople on this call, but make sure your salespeople aren't overcommitting. We go to conferences like EDUCAUSE, and I'll walk around to the booths, and it's a conference filled with educational software companies, for example, at EDUCAUSE, and I'll go around and try to make small talk with them and figure out how accessible they've been working on accessibility, because every one of them needs an ACR and a VPAT to sell to universities. And the salespeople are almost always, oh yeah, we're accessible. We're fully accessible. Oh yeah, we've got the accessible down pat. And then you go and look at their websites and their platform, and most of them are in, hopefully some varying degree of it, but certainly not at the level their salespeople are saying. So anyway, make sure that your salespeople are not overpromising, and ideally get your salesperson an ACR in that VPAT format so that the sales team can be using accessibility to sell to more customers. So yeah, this is very interesting. It's kind of how the industry is over time. The accessibility is getting pushed from these large players that have the budgets into the smaller players and the middle players, and the small and middle players have an opportunity to use this as a competitive advantage, use this as a way to win this first big contract by doing it properly. So there's a real economic opportunity here for you if you're a software company. All right, so in terms of the laws, this is where it's good to be proactive. So past month, this past month, we had a wave of folks showing up a little bit on the late side for like Colorado's new accessibility law that's going into effect on July 1. So kind of a wave of last minute audits. There's also European Accessibility Act coming in. We had some panic around how to meet that. So, don't wait. Understand where your customers are, what legal obligations you have for compliance based on where you're located, where your customers are located. And my number one tip here, our number one tip as an organization, is don't wait until the last minute. Try to get ahead of this. The sooner you start working on it, the easier it's going to be to budget for. You can spread the budgets over time. You can work the budgets into your annual budgeting process. No CFO wants a last minute, invoice on their desk or proposal on their desk for some, 5-figure or more proposal that you need to have at the last minute. So anyway, think about this early. And I guess the nice thing too is you look around all these different laws. At this point, most of them are all pointing towards some version of WCAG AA. So it could be WCAG 2.1, 2.0, WCAG 2.2 is the newest version. So the cool thing here is that no matter what, in most cases, no matter what your compliance obligations are, you can kind of meet them all by doing the work, doing manual audits, ACRs in a VPAT format, doing automated scanning, just making progress and doing your best to achieve WCAG conformance. And then, especially in terms of in the US, we have all these lawsuits that are flying around for ADA demand letters. This is one of the most painful places. We see people that, have, for whatever reason, decided to ignore the fact that this is a real requirement. They ignore all these lawsuits, and maybe they're still just not aware that the lawsuits are happening. But they get the demand letter, and what happens there is now it's a legal issue. You ignored it, you didn't work to put yourself in any kind of defensible position. Now you've got a demand letter, and you have to pay lawyers, you might have to pay damages, and what we see over and over is that by the time the lawyers have been paid, the settlements have been paid, it was already an unexpected expense. There's not money left in the budget to do actual accessibility to make the improvements on the website. And so the the e-commerce site doesn't make any improvements. They get hit with another lawsuit 6 months or a year down the road, and it's just wash, rinse, repeat over and over. So stay ahead of this. You don't need to be paying lawyers if you get yourself in a defensible position. No one wants to spend their money on lawyers. You want to spend your money on improving your website, making a better experience on your website. So put your money into yourself, invest it into your own organization. Don't put your head in the sand, ignore this, and all of a sudden you're paying out for unexpected legal expenses. And I'll add too, accessible web, everything we built here is really built to help you meet you where you're at in terms of budgets, in terms of timelines, help you make incremental improvements. So this is progress over perfection. We can sync up with most organizations' budgets and help them make meaningful progress towards this, be in a defensible position. So there's really, we're doing everything we can to eliminate the barriers and any real reason that you would have to not get started on this. All right, so finally, the best part of accessibility here. It's just good UX. The Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, the four principles: perceivable, operable, understandable, robust. Sure, they're designed, developed, maintained, thought about in terms of folks with disabilities and broad accessibility for hopefully an almost infinite combination of users, abilities, disabilities, assistive technologies, devices. But what that means is by implementing accessibility well, it's just good UX. So we love talking to UX people. They get it. They work all day. They show up to work and they want to make better experiences. And this is just another skill set, another set of tools to help you do that. So oftentimes folks jump right to, like there's a crazy call I had one time where someone was like, well, I'm a car dealership. Why do I care about people that are blind? People that are blind don't drive cars. And that's just crazy for a lot of reasons, right? But this isn't just for people that are blind. Accessibility is for everyone. 28.7% of Americans, as of some 2024 stat I found, have a disability. A disability could be someone with glasses, older folks. In the case of the company I was mentioning earlier that I was talking to today, I'm like, where do most of the donations come from that are going into these universities? Donations to nonprofits very often come from older folks that are retired, have some excess cash. Don't you want to make accessibility improvements for those older folks so that they are more likely to use your donation platform to donate money, and then your customers are making more money as well? So anyway, the exciting thing here is you can frame this as an opportunity. So this is kind of the same as baking it into a contract. Accessibility is an opportunity, a measurable, quantifiable way to get more people to convert and use your software. And so try to measure it, try to, take the before and after snapshot. Walmart's another wicked cool example here. We got to talk to some folks from the Canadian Walmart at one point, and what was so interesting about their call was they have this huge mass of customers that are pretty different than most sites. They have a lot of people hitting their website, but they had a whole team that would identify an issue on a product details page. They would say, okay, 5 million people hit our product details template a day based on stats. 0.1% have a vision issue or whatever. I'm just spitballing stats here, but X amount has this disability. We did some tests with folks with this disability, and we believe that making this fix could result in this amount of incremental income coming into our company. So not everyone has the huge stats that Walmart has, or huge volume and able to track stats like Walmart has, but there's a lot of ways, even for smaller organizations, that you can measure this and frame it as an opportunity, not an expense. Tracking towards 10 minutes. Great job. All right, planning your budget early. So this is a big thing working with us, like reach out early. Don't try to do all your accessibility work and then come to us to get your VPAT at the end. It helps us to know, we can plan and work alongside your engineering team if you let us know early, right? We can plan your audit when your team is going to be, in the proper stage. We can do design audits early so that your engineering team isn't building inaccessible code into new features. We can help line up an audit or an ACR so that it fits your annual contract or your budget cycles. So anyway, talk to us early. We're always happy to review applications, review websites, provide suggested scopes, provide suggested approaches. So Gianna and I are doing this all day long. Reach out to us early, no obligation to talk to us. And even if you don't work with us, we're happy to get you set up on the right track and get you doing this the right way. Definitely be thinking about annual budgets. Part of accessibility requirements, like I was saying, when they're baked into contracts, oftentimes there can be requirements to get an audit and an ACR completed on an annual basis. We actually have tools to help you make that super cost effective by helping you track the changes that are being done on an application or website. So the thing here is just, as you are looking at your initial accessibility project, that might be a larger outlay of cash. So talk to us early. We can work it into next year's budget or help you spread it across the next 2 years. And then our goal is to help you to have an annual accessibility budget, just like you're probably doing stuff like an annual SOC 2 line item in your budget, an annual hosting line item, right? So we can help you to work this into next year, whenever your fiscal year works. And normally what you should expect is it's going to be a big project to get everything in order, right? Kind of rework code, do some initial reports. And then our job is always to help you shift left and help you to start doing accessibility on a more affordable, recurring cadence that is, something that can be expected. And it should only be a surprise one time, hopefully. This is one of the biggest things. Your biggest expense here is likely to be internal resources. So again, this is one of those cases where don't build everything and then come to us to get your accessibility conformance report or audit or VPAT done, because then your engineers are going to hate accessibility. They're going to grumble about it because they just built this cool new thing. Now they've got to go all the way back to square one and implement hundreds of accessibility tasks. If you think about it early, we can work with your designers, help them inform whoever's building your component library, help your component library inform your engineers as they're building. But just anytime you're doing this, and especially the first time you're budgeting for your first accessibility audit, if your team has not been implementing this, does not have any tools on hand, has not been working this into any processes, you need to be expecting that the biggest cost is not going to be calling Accessible Web or an accessibility vendor. The biggest cost is going to be engineering time to do rework and catch things up. And then finally, start small, make progress. Accessibility doesn't need to be expensive. We can work with any level of budget. Sometimes you need to do certain levels to hit a contract's requirements or to hit compliance, but just don't get stuck on trying to do everything at once and end up with that paralysis of how do I go from 0 to 100? The way you go from 0 to 100 is you go incrementally, you accelerate 10 miles an hour, 20 miles an hour, and it's going to snowball as things get going. So, promise I'd make my sales pitch quick, but Gianna and I are available all the time. We hopefully have a plethora of ways to get in touch with us on our website. You can sign up for a 14-day free trial of Ramp. And whether you just onboard into our tools and try to get started that way, or hopefully successfully get started that way, or at any point, if you want to have a conversation with a member of our team, we have multiple layers of resources to help assist you here. All right, discussion time.